Albert Wesker is not Umbrella's villain. His betrayals were a scalpel cutting through corporate lies. The Ouroboros project, a trap to expose Spencer's rot. His death in Re-5 left the conspiracy alive, a wound untreated. What if the man called traitor was the only surgeon willing to amputate the cancer? The screen splits. Wesker's voice echoes. Slice not for logo power burns Wesker's. A question lingers. Betrayal of what if the Umbrella was no rogue impulse whistleblower, never wore a lab coat? What if Albert Wesker's blade sliced not for power but for truth? The betrayal of Umbrella was no rogue impulse. It was a chess move. A gambit to unravel the corporation's bioethical rot. Ouroboros, the failed immortality project, was his Trojan horse. He leaked data to governments, triggered outbreaks in Raccoon, Harvard. Manipulated S.T.A.R.S, BSA puppets in his silent war. Each death a data point, each collapse a headline. The world saw a traitor. Wesker saw a reckoning. His Ouroboros virus, a failed experiment. His mission, a precision strike, to make Umbrella's crimes impossible to bury. The question burns. When the mask fell, was Wesker's greatest deception the idea of the villain himself? By 1998, Umbrella's labs stretched across continents. A silent war brewed beneath biohazard protocols. Albert Wesker answered the call, not as a soldier, but as a scientist embedded in S.T.A.R.S. Alpha. His presence a scalpel slicing through the team's trust. The mansion incident was no accident. It was a calculated strike to leak BOW blueprints, to fracture Umbrella's iron grip. Ouroboros, his supposed weapon, crumbled. A failure, but failures can be weapons too. Wesker's reports vanished into secure channels. Evidence of corporate butchery routed to shadowed allies. Each mission a data dump. Each survivor a witness. The cold truth, he was never Umbrella's pawn. He was the splinter in their machine. The question festers, did he die that night in Raccoon City? Or was his body a cipher, his real war just beginning? The air in the mansion's lab was thin, metallic. A flickering bulb cast jagged shadows as Albert Wesker's gloved hand parted his coat. The syringe gleamed a vial of G-virus, Umbrella's failed experiment. He injected it deep, muscle and bone aching as the pathogen latched onto his DNA. Pain seared his spine, his vision blurred. The world narrowed to a single truth, asterisk, this was the only way, asterisk. Umbrella had designed the virus to kill. They believed it would purge the host, a controlled detonation. Wesker knew better. He had read the suppressed reports. The virus didn't destroy it, asterisk, rewrote, asterisk. His body became a battlefield, cells rebelled, tendons thickened. His breath fogged the air, not from cold, but from the fever of transformation. By dawn, he was a ghost. The BSAAS records would call it a miracle. Umbrella's scientists would whisper of anomalies, but Wesker's survival was no accident. He had weaponized their failure. Every scar, every mutation was a key to their undoing. They expected him to die, to vanish like the others. Instead, he walked out of that mansion with a new designa body that defied their chains. The virus became his cipher, a language only he could decode. He began collecting evidence, logs, blueprints, testimonials from those who survived the facility's horrors. Umbrella's board convened in secret. They debated containment. A traitor in their midst, using their own weapon against them, but Wesker had already outmaneuvered them. His survival was a silent declaration, asterisk, I am the flaw in your system, asterisk. The G-virus gnawed at his sanity, yes. It twisted his form, gave him eyes that glowed like dying stars, but it also gave him purpose. Every step toward Raccoon City was a step toward exposure, every battle a performance. They saw a monster, he was a messenger. Did Umbrella know? Perhaps, but they misread the script. They thought they had crafted a weapon, instead they birthed a reckoning. And as Wesker's shadow stretched across the ruins of their empire, one truth festered. The man who should have been their weapon became their undoing, defied their expectations. Defied their god complex, asterisk, defied them, asterisk. The myth of loyalty clings to him like a shroud. They called him a traitor, yet failed to see the deeper betrayal. Albert Wesker did not serve Umbrella. He asterisk fever dreamed asterisk within its walls, stitching a noose of genetic paradoxes while they praised his allegiance. Ouroboros was no corporate directivate, was a serpent eating its own tail, a plan to purge the weak and crown himself god of the remnant. Beneath sterile labs he cultivated horrors. Test subjects writhed, their DNA unraveling into something asterisk other asterisk. Test subjects bled, their screams etched blueprints for a new species. Ouroboros did not heal it consumed. What kind of god demands such sacrifice? Wesker's thesis frames evolution as redemption, but the math is monstrous. Each success was a corpse, each breakthrough a pyre. The project's goal was never to save humanity. It was to erase it, the files he leaked to the press, a smoke screen. His betrayal was a scalpel. He let Umbrella believe Thade weaponized him. Let them think the serpent would swallow its tail, but the truth coils tighter. Ouroboros was never meant to rise. It was a trap, a monument to hubris. Every vial of the virus contained evidence, every death a verdict. Wesker's final act was not to rule, but to expose asterisk. Yet the cost thonce the void he left. Did he think the world deserved salvation, or did he know salvation was impossible? The thesis pages whisper both answers. A whistleblower who became the monster he hunted. A savior who bathed in the blood of his own design. The labs fell, the corporation crumbled, but the question festers, what if the cure was always the plague? Wesker's betrayal was no act of greed. He weaponized Ouroboros to burn Umbrella's lies to ash. Every lab fire, every soldier turned, a thread in the tapestry of exposure. The world saw a traitor, but the truth was a scalpel cutting through corporate rot. His death wasn't failure. It was the final data point in an experiment complete, the corporation's corpse left as evidence. The cure was never the plague was the silence, and Wesker. He was the scream and the static. Alex Wesker carried the infection, not the virus, the infection of doubt. In Revelations 2 *, his fractured mission mirrored his father's, ghost haunting the corridors of a corporation that had already buried its sins. He sought the truth Wesker left half carved into the stone, a labyrinth of data, encrypted directives, and names that dissolved like ash. But the bodyguard's shadow was longer than his son could grasp. Albert's death in *5* was no triumph. It was a pause, a breath held too long. Spencer's clock kept ticking. The files Wesker smuggled, they ended in a dead man's pocket. His final act wasn't to destroy Umbrelate, was to make them answer *, to force their rot into the light. But light is a fickle thing, it bends, it fractures, and in the end the boardroom doors closed quieter than they opened. Alex would never know the full design. How his father's betrayal was a mirror held to the monsters. How Wesker's Ouroboros was not a weapon, but a witness. A chain of evidence strung across 7 codes, 3 continents, and 1 corpse too many. The truth didn't die with him, it slept. Waiting for a hand brave enough to follow the thread. But courage is a currency spent in silence, and the world moved on. The plague, it found new hosts, the silence. It built a new vault, Wesker's scream, it echoed then faded, into static. The static did not last. From the ruins of Raccoon City to the ashes of Umbrella's labs, a pattern emerged. Albert Wesker's betrayals were not the acts of a traitor. They were fractures in a vault, each pathogen he unleashed a T-virus here, a G-virus. There was a message scrawled in blood. Look closer. This corporation does not experiment. It devours. What if the man they called a monster was the only one who saw the true scale of the horror? Umbrella's evil was not a single crime. It was a machine, a hunger. From T-virus to Ouroboros, their science did not evolve, it mutated. Each new strain was a confession. We will not stop until humanity is a footnote in our ledger. Wesker's war was not against B, S, AA, or S.T.A.R.S. It was against the arithmetic of extinction. He played both sides. Let them think him a mercenary, a madman. Let them waste bullets on his body while he dismantled their foundations. The Ouroboros project, a tombstone, a misstep final corporation's lifeblood. He knew it would fail. Failure was the you point. A misstep betrayal was a coiled breadcrumb serpent meant to leading to the truth, silence. Failure was the you point, call him a villain. But what villain sacrifices his body to a failed virus? What tyrant lets his army burn? Wesker's agenda was written in the scars across his spine, a map of resistance. His methods were poison, his purpose, an antidote. The world remembers his scream, it forgets the echo that followed, the sound of a system cracking under the weight of its own shadow. The whistleblower did not ask for forgiveness. He demanded reckoning, and in the static, the reckoning still hums. The truth carves deeper than any blade. Albert Wesker, the traitor, the butcher, the ghost in the machine, his hands bled for a world Umbrella sought to bury. They call him a villain. They call it sabotage. What if it was a confession? A single spark in a warehouse of kindling, his betrayal the match that lit the pyre of a corporation built on human ash. Umbrella's rot did not kill itself. Wesker's Ouroboros was no weapon of conquest, it was a mirror, a grotesque reflection of their own depravity, twisted to collapse under its own weight. He leaked blueprints to rivals. He turned soldiers into monsters, each act a scalpel, excising the cancer until the body could no longer sustain the lie. What price such justice? 1,000 lives for one. A symphony of chaos to silence a choir of executives humming hymns to profit. The cost is not in the bloodshed. It is in the question that follows. When the system is a grave, who decides which shovel strikes are holy? They say whistleblowers wear crowns of thorns. Wesker's crown was a noose. His reckoning was never for redemption. It was a debt paid in the currency of a world that birthed him where mercy is a product, and truth is a prototype discarded when it fails the profit margin. What does it mean to expose evil? Evil is the economy. The static still hums, and in the silence between the screams the question remains, who is the real monster? The man who burned the house or the ones who built it? What if Albert Wesker wasn't a villain, but a rogue agent trying to dismantle Umbrella from within? His betrayal was no act of greed. It was a scalpel cutting through the rot of a corporation that treated human evolution as a ledger entry. Ouroboros, that serpentine engine of rebirth, was never meant to rule. It was a mirror held up to the abyss, proof that progress, when untethered from morality, becomes a slow-burn holocaust. Umbrella's laboratories were cathedrals of cruelty. They harvested suffering as casually as farmers reap wheat. Wesker saw the truth, that evolution in their hands was not ascension but annihilation. He weaponized their own arrogance. Every B.S.A.A. mission, every shattered containment protocol was a message scrawled in blood. Asterisk, look here, look at what you've made. Asterisk, yet the paradox gnaws. Ouroboros, for all its horror, hinted at a purer spark, a species shedding its frailty, its hunger for war. But Umbrella's answer was always the same: profit. They would have let the world burn so long as their vaults stayed full. Wesker's rebellion was a torch in the dark. It lit the way for others. It also burned him. He became the monster they feared, the traitor, the abomination. But ask yourself, who is the true betrayer? The man who dared to unshackle humanity, or the machine that chained it? His legacy is a scar, a warning. Evolution is not a gift, it is a question. And Wesker, in his fall, gave the world its first answer. The silence between the screams grows louder. The house still stands. Who will finally knock it down? The house still stands. Who will finally knock it down? Albert Wesker's blade cut both ways. His betrayal of Umbrella bled the corporation dry. The Ouroboros project, a serpent eating its tail, was never meant to birth gods. It was a mirror, shattered. Ouroboros is the next stage of human evolution. The words hang hollow. A lie wrapped in inevitability. Wesker's final act, a scalpel through the throat of his own creation. He knew the serum would fail, knew its hunger would collapse under its own weight. But failure is a kind of truth. Every lab report, every stolen sample, every death he orchestrated was a brick in the foundation of evidence. The files buried in Re5 code, the paradox of his legacy: whistleblower and monster, architect and executioner. The Umbrella logo dissolves like a ghost in the dark. Its emblem, a crown without a king. The silence between screams stretches. A question left unspoken: was the house ever his to burn? The voice fades, the screen goes black. The house still stands. Spencer's schemes matured in shadows long before 1998. Wesker's death in Re5 did not end them. What if his blade turned inward? What if his betrayal was a scalpel? Ouroboros failed. Its ashes smothered Umbrella's secrets deeper. Wesker's final act, a phantom thread pulled to unravel the tapestry. Each explosion, each double cross, a breadcrumb for those who would follow. The company's heart still beats in code-red vaults. Wesker's ghost walks between the lines of every unresolved file. Was he a traitor or the first domino? The next video peels back layers. The truth beneath Wesker.